It's starting.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We are just going to take a couple moments before we get started here. We still have a lot of attendees working their way in here. Numbers still going up. So just another moment, we'll get started. Hope you're all enjoying this lovely Thursday. I'll mention here before we get started, this does include the live Q&A, which we will have towards the end of this presentation. So please stick around for that live Q&A. We'll get into a little more about that in just a few moments. All right, numbers are starting to tabletop off here, so we will go ahead and get started. Again, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to today's town hall, which is CMMC dry runs versus mock assessments. What's the difference and why does it matter? Again, I'm Adam Starnes, account manager here at MAD Security. I want to thank you for joining the September town hall. We do this every third Thursday of each month, different subjects, somewhere around CMMC and managed security services. If you're a client already, you probably know who I am. You know that I usually host these sessions. We have guests every month, and we answer different questions that we've had along the way around things that are going to keep you up to speed on CMMC readiness. And if you're not a client yet, I hope to meet you soon. We can talk a little bit about your compliance journey, what you've tried, what you haven't, talk about if and how we might be able to assist you getting CMMC compliant ready. Also today with us, she's going to be in the presentation a little bit, and then of course the answerer to the live Q&A session is Jaclyn Jones. Jaclyn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Adam. So as he mentioned, my name is Jaclyn Jones, and I'm the head of the compliance department here at MAD Security.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jaclyn. So in today's presentation, we're going to clear up a topic. It's a common point of confusion. CMMC dry runs versus mock assessments. The two sound similar, but they serve different purposes. And knowing when to use one or both could be the difference in you passing your CMMC audit, keeping your contracts, realizing in the middle of your audit that you weren't as prepared as you thought you were. So let's dive in today and learn a little bit about what is the difference and what should you use. So we will start with what is a mock assessment. I'm going to dive right in. Think of this as a full rehearsal of the real CMMC Level 2 audit. Here's what happens. We simulate a see-through PAO audit. We are not a see-through PAO, but we simulate a see-through PAO audit using the same methodology and procedures. We evaluate all 110 NIST 800-171 practices or controls, making sure and marking them as met, not met, or partially met. So we are checking all of those controls. We are checking all 320 objectives that are within those controls. Occasionally, someone may say the control is non-applicable instead of met, non-met, or partially met. But Jaclyn, do you mind explaining a little bit about why most of the time, when someone thinks that a control is non-applicable, that it still is?
Sure. So as Adam mentioned, that is a very common misconception so how it results in how people get confused is they just read the title of a control. For example, a common one we see is Control 3.1.18, which is mobile device connection. So the client may just look at the title, see mobile devices. It says control connection mobile devices, and they go, oh, well, we don't allow CUI to be stored on mobile devices. We don't have anything about mobile devices in our CUI environment. Therefore, that control is not applicable to us. So they just mark that as a nay. The problem with that is you can't look at the overall control as a whole to decide if something's not applicable to your environment or not. So for example, on this one, objective A, mobile devices that process, store, or transmit CUI are identified. You have to actually address that objective. If you do not authorize mobile devices to be used with CUI to be stored on mobile devices, you need to address that objective by saying that your company identifies 0 mobile devices as being authorized to process, store, or transmit CUI. So therefore, that control is actually applicable to you because you have to address those individual objectives. The only way that you can actually mark a control is not applicable is you have to get written permission from the CIO of the DoD. So just again, for you to have something not marked not applicable, you do have to have written permission, and then your SSP has to fully document how that control is actually not applicable to your environment.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Jaclyn. Yeah, listeners, Jaclyn and I were having that conversation yesterday. I asked her to explain that because I know it kind of got a little off where we were going with this presentation, but I thought it was very important because there's so many people that we hear say that something's not applicable to them. So I thought that was very important. So thank you so much for that explanation.
Sure, of course.
So we'll continue to, you get a CMMC readiness report as a deliverable of the mock assessment. It's going to be tailored for your executives, and you're going to get a plan of action and milestones if gaps are found. We'll even simulate scoring and review hashed artifacts so that you can rehearse exactly what the auditor will expect. In short, the mock assessment shows you how to perform how you would perform, if your audit were tomorrow without the risk of failing. There's also a part, we validate the evidence, ensuring that your policies and procedures and technical artifacts and that your logs truly align with the control requirements. If something isn't right, we'll go ahead and flag it now when it's not too late. Finding out that something's not met is too late at the official audit. That's why a mock audit or a mock assessment could come in handy. So that'll lead us into the next thing we're talking about here, which is what is a dry run? This is more of a practice drill for your people. It's about ensuring that your team is prepared, not just your documentation. Here's what it looks like. We engage with all departments that will be part of your final audit. HR, IT, cybersecurity, even the person who updates your company website. We walk through each control with them, coaching on how to present evidence, show artifacts, and answer questions live. This isn't about scoring. The dry run is about giving you confidence and making sure that you're prepared. We only recommend a dry run once you are close to a perfect SPRS score of 110 because it's not about are you compliant, it's about are you ready to prove it in front of the auditor. In short, a dry run is like a dress rehearsal with coaching, while a mock assessment is like a scrimmage game with the referees calling it by the book. I was talking to someone yesterday, giving suggestions on which of these they should do, and they weren't really confident in going through the audit process yet. So we said, let's go through the dry run because we'll be able to coach you through it. You have our VCM service, so we'll be sitting in the audit itself with you. So I think you're going to benefit more from that than if you still want to do a mock assessment, more than welcome to, but thought that'd be more beneficial for them. But then we have clients come to us and they say, I'm ready to go right into that audit. And we've got it all figured out. We know who's going to do the talking. So then we say, okay, cool. This is kind of like a scrimmage basketball game, right? The referee's calling it by the book. We come in just like the C3PAO would, and we check everything as they would and document what we find that is not met. So a dry run may sound like it's time consuming. That may be a drawback for you not wanting to do one. Or you may not want to spend the extra money on doing a dry run right now. But let me say this, it can save you enormous amounts of time and money and absolutely lots of stress later. And here's why. Preparation for the unexpected. During the real certification, a C3PAO assessor won't tell you exactly where to find the evidence. They'll simply say, show me the proof. If you don't have a plan, people freeze, they scramble, they make mistakes. So the dry run helps you assign whoever will answer each of these questions. And it will also show you how to provide the evidence and how you actually show that to the auditor. Each person will know their role before the big day. We also make sure that the right person is talking for each control. For example, IT shouldn't be answering HR policy questions, and HR should not be showing firewall configurations. We validate that you have the type of evidence the assessor expects, whether that's a written policy, a technical log, a procedure walkthrough, or a live screen share. The result? You walk into your official audit calm, organized, and confident. So here's one of the biggest problems we see. Employees sometimes can't explain a process that they have documented. The paper looks perfect, but when they are asked to walk through the steps of the assessor, the person stumbles or leaves gaps. Assessors don't want to just see something that's written. They don't want just a screenshot. They want to know your people live it and understand it. And that's why in our dry runs, we don't just check the documents, we rehearse conversations. We make sure that someone can confidently walk the assessor through the process step by step. This exercise alone often exposes weaknesses that you wouldn't just catch on paper. So I know we've talked about it, but let's be clear on the difference. The dry run focused on people, preparation, presentation. We don't score the controls here. It's about rehearsing and coaching. The mock assessment is a full evaluation of where we score controls, validate evidence, and produce findings. This is the final check before the real audit. Think of it this way: the dry run trains your team while the mock assessment tests your system. Both matter, but they serve very different purposes. So, why do these matter? Because documentation alone doesn't win an audit, people do. A mock assessment gives you realistic readiness score and points out systematic risks. A dry run prepares your staff and leadership for live questioning. So HR doesn't freeze when asked how policies are applied, or IT doesn't miss a step when showing configuration evidence. Together, they give you both technical assurance and human confidence. Some companies only do one of these, some do both, some do neither. But those who take advantage of these extra steps almost always walk into their audit with greater certainty and less anxiety. So let's talk about a very frequently asked question. I know what some of you are thinking. Why doesn't the Virtual Compliance Manager service include the dry run or the mock assessment? Well, here are the reasons. VCM gets you compliant ready. That means working through every control that is not met or partially met, closing gaps, building your SSP and your POAM, and even us sitting through your official audit with you. While dry runs are about coaching your team through the audit process itself. Mock audits or mock assessments validate that everything we've walked through, whether it be in the interviews we did with you or the artifact collection, all the evidence we gathered, it makes sure that all of that is still true, that is still valid, that it has not changed. This ensures that you are indeed still compliant before paying and going through your official C3PAO audit. That's why mock assessments and dry runs are optional add-ons. They're not always needed, but when they are, it can be the difference between a smooth pass and a stressful surprise. So here's another benefit. These exercises often uncover mistakes that you didn't even know you were making. Maybe a coworker told you a process worked one way, but in practice, it works differently. Maybe a system change since you first wrote your documentation. Maybe someone forgot to update a policy after a new tool was deployed. Dry runs and mock assessments catch those gaps early, so you're not blindsided in front of a C3PAO auditor. And remember, There are several controls that cannot be POAM'd and remediated later. We have people ask all the time, do you have to score a perfect 110? And the answer is you cannot. You've got 3 different point levels. You have 5-point controls, 3-point controls, and 1-point controls. To be able to POAM a control that you missed and go back and fix it later, it can only be one of the select 1-point controls. You cannot miss any of the 5s or the 3s. You have to score a minimum of 88. And then I'll have to go back to verify for sure if it's 120 or 180 days, but you'll have that time frame to be able to go back and remediate for them to come back and check it. So I guess what I'm getting at here is that missing one of those 3 or 5s or one of the ones that's not allowed can mean that you don't pass. That's why you'd love to be able to go ahead and catch one of these in a dry run or a mock assessment. Catch issues before it's too late. So another question we hear is why not just let a see-through PAO do a mock audit since they're the ones doing the real audit? Well, here's why. See-through PAOs cannot consult. They cannot guide you or coach you or suggest how you fix something. It's just against the rules. You can't have someone coaching you through a mock audit or a dry run, say, fix this, and then come back and pay us again to do the actual audit. Conflict of interest. That's why you have a MSSP or RPO like MAD Security helping you prepare so that you can then get our guidance, get our remediation tips, get our assistance going through the actual audit, and then have to see through PAO do the final check. So that's one reason. At MAD Security, we will help you rehearse, prepare your evidence, and sharpen your answers. As your partner, we'll be there during your official audit to back you up. If you're a current VCM compliant, that is, VCM manager, compliance manager client, or VCM. With the see-through PAO, you are not on your own. With MAD Security, you're prepared and you're supported every step of the way. So you've invested your time, your money, and your resources into becoming compliant ready. So why risk it all by walking into an audit cold? A dry run lets you rehearse with your entire team. A mock assessment validates your environment against real audit standards. Both give you a chance to fix issues before they cost you thousands in rework or a failed certification. You're going to pay $50, $60, $70,000 to get your CMMC Level 2 audit. Don't go into that not sure that you're going to pass. Remember, there are several controls that cannot be POAM'd and remediated later. They have to be met during the audit. It has to be right the first time. All right, and as far as content goes, that is going to be it for the presentation today. But before we move on to the Q&A session, I would like to go ahead and share with you the giveaways and the free consultation offerings that we do have here for you. So what you're going to see here at the very top of this is the link or the URL to the free CMMC pre-assessment. It's going to be 31 questions, and you're going to answer yes, no, or unsure. And it's going to give us a really good idea about where you may have gaps in your CMMC journey. The next link is going to be the free CMMC Master Bundle. This does have 5 different documents, everything from CMMC enclaving to how to map CUI and several other tips on CMMC. The next giveaway we have here for you is the free CMMC assessment guide. And it is just like it sounds, a guide to actually going through the assessment and how to have a complete roadmap to certification success. And then last but not least, here at the bottom, I do have both my email address and the URL or link to my direct calendar meeting. And you can actually book a time to meet with me and we can discuss what you're doing currently for CMMC and for managed security services like SOC, EDR, vulnerability management, and or both. kind of talk about what you've had some troubles with or where you currently stand and see if and how Mad Security might be able to assist. So please feel free to take care of one or all of these things. Please feel free to book me at your convenience and we can have a further conversation around what you're doing and see how we might be able to assist. You'll be able to get this link here afterwards whenever this is sent out after the webinar is over, just in case you do not have time to take the screenshot at this moment. And that will go ahead and bring us to the live Q&A. What we'll do here is I want you to go ahead and submit all the questions that you may have for Jaclyn. Our compliance lead is actually going to join us again. We're going to be able to ask any and all questions that you have. If we do run out of time and cannot answer all of your questions, we will reply to you after the webinar is over. We can do phone call, we can do email. So just go ahead and submit all the questions that you have and we'll go get to them in order as we do receive them. All right, we do have a few here. All right, we got a few coming in here. Keep on submitting those as we go. We'll go ahead and get started and just get to them as they come in. All right, you ready to go, Jaclyn?
I'm ready.
Perfect. All right, first question we have here. We had a lady submit, if I already have VCM, do I still need a dry run or mock assessment?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, as Adam mentioned earlier, basically what our VCM service is, we focus on remediation. We make sure that you have your documentation in place, whether it's your policies, procedures, processes, make sure there's sufficient evidence to verify that you are meeting the requirements of the control. That being said, that's VCM. What we use the dry run for is to really prep you for that C3PO certification assessment. So essentially it's a really good tool to help your team. So for example, I'll just tell you our exact process. We go through all of the controls and we verify that you have the right type of evidence to show the assessor. Because what the assessor is going to do is ask you to provide evidence for each of these objectives, whether it's documentation or like a screenshot. A screen share. And so we're going to make sure that you have the right type of evidence to show the assessor, whichever that type may be. And then also we're going to identify who on your team is the correct person to present that evidence, because it needs to be the person who has the most knowledgeable of that. For example, if there's control about a firewall, it needs to be the person that has the most experience with the firewall configurations. So we create a playbook of this is the person that's going to show this control and this evidence, things like that. We also make sure that that includes the correct people, because for example, another misconception that we commonly hear is that only the IT team is involved in these certification assessments. It's not true. HR, you've got onboarding procedures, offboarding procedures. If you have a third-party MSP, if they do technical configurations on your behalf, they also need to participate. So with that dry run, helps you prepare is your entire team or the group of people who are going to help you with your certification assessment, whether that's your internal team, whether it's third parties. If you have Mad Security SOC, our SOC personnel will attend the certification assessment to show evidence on your behalf. And it's just things like that. We just really make sure that your team is fully prepared to address the assessor's questions. And this service gives people like a peace of mind, because if you feel like you're prepared to go into that certification assessment, you tend to stay more calm, you think logically, you don't panic if the assessor asks you a question that you can't answer. Basically, we kind of walk through exactly how you properly need to present evidence during your certification assessment. The mock assessment is more of we simulate the actual C3PO certification process, right? We do a review period ahead of time. During the actual interview days, we treat it just like the C3PO would. We ask you to show us, pull up your screen share of the exact technical configuration. We've reviewed your documentation ahead of time. And so we take on the role of the C3PO assessor. And then at the end of that process, we will tell you what gaps we've identified, things like that. And then that will help you fix any issues that you have going into your certification assessment, because you really want to make sure that you have all 100 controls, 320 objectives completely addressed. You don't want to rely on being able to put something on a POAM, because if you do that, it's a less of a chance you're going to be successful in your certification assessment, because odds are the assessor is going to find something, and you don't want an issue that you knew of ahead of time, and the fact that you just didn't fix it to cause you to fail your assessment. So, and another comment about the POAM, though, you are allowed to put certain controls on a POAM. You can only put up to a certain number. I think it's 22. Don't quote me on that, but there's only a certain number of controls you can put on a POAM. You do have to remediate those within 180 days. So that being said, the more you prep for your certification assessment going in, you're likely to be more successful. Stay calm. The assessor will have more confidence in what you're doing, and then therefore you're likely to be more successful during that assessment.
Excellent. Yeah, a lot of great information there. This might kind of roll into that. This you might have just answered some of that, but the next question that the gentleman asked was, do I have to do both?
No, you definitely don't have to do both. So they serve two completely different purposes. The dry run is helps your team get ready for a certification assessment, and then therefore, like I said, we line up who's going to present the evidence, prepare your team, make sure HR understands what they're going to present, and things like that. So it's really a lot of it is like a rehearsal. And then the mock assessment is a simulation of the actual certification assessment itself. If you've never gone through that kind of assessment before, it can be intimidating. You might freeze up. You're in front of the assessor, things like that. So, and that one is really more of a simulation of the real world certification. So they serve two completely different purposes. Your team may be prepared to go into the assessment and need the mock assessment experience, or vice versa. They may need the team to be prepped for it, and then they're confident that they would handle that from that point forward. So again, you don't have to sign up for both. Both can be very beneficial, but you may not need both of those.
Absolutely. Let's see. I have another question here that
Sure.
if I fail a mock assessment, do I fail CMMC?
No, of course. And So the mock assessment has no correlation to your real world certification assessment. It's not entered in any kind of government system or anything like that. It's really just a service that we provide at Mad Security. We'll give you a report. We will list all of the items that we identify that you're not meeting the requirements of, and the list of issues in the reports that we give you at the end of the mock assessment. And if anything, it helps you be more successful in your actual certification assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, okay. This is, what if HR or any of our non-technical staff don't know the answers to the questions?
So that is another reason to do a dry run or mock assessment, because if they don't know the answers during us questioning them, that's going to be a huge red flag during your actual certification assessment. We need to uncover those issues now. They need to understand, first of all, you have to have your procedures documented, right? Your onboarding, offboarding, if a personnel transfers to a different role or location, you need to have those things documented, and then your HR staff or someone who is authorized to speak on those things needs to be able to talk through those processes. And you need to rehearse this with them. They need to know exactly, they need to have the verbiage that they're going to actually tell the assessor. They need to rehearse that. And that's very important. Any of these processes that you have documented, you actually need to be prepared to speak about these processes during your certification assessment. That will not only show the assessor that you know what the documentation says, but then also that you're actually following it. Because just because you have it documented, you need to be following the process that you actually have defined also. So again, if your HR doesn't know how to answer during our dry run and mock assessment, that is an issue that needs to be fixed. And so that will, again, help uncover that issue during our service.
All right. Okay. Gentleman here asked, how much time should they give themselves between doing the mock assessment before they go to do the real assessment?
So that was kind of a hard question to gauge, because it really depends on how many issues you uncover and how severe they are. If your assessment report is perfectly fine, there's no issues, there's no red flags or anything like that, um, I know people are on a really big timeline here at this point since 48 CFR got released. We used to say, 2 months is a pretty good indication between your mock assessment and your certification assessment, just to give yourself adequate time, because you do need to have adequate prep. It's really, I can't really give a ballpark because it really depends on what we uncover. If there's severe issues, they're going to need to be fixed. Like if you have something major that we find that you don't have implemented, you need the time to do it. So there's not a set stone you need to. I recommend at least 1 month, two, if you can possibly at least do it. I would feel more comfortable at 2 months than if you had it any less of a time frame than that.
Yeah, and this wasn't part of the question, Jaclyn, but maybe you'd be able to shed some light on my thought I had.
Sure.
A lot of that probably depends on how familiar we are as well. Like if it's one of
Mm-hmm.
our VCM clients that asked
Yes.
that, then we ought to have a pretty good understanding versus someone that's never dealt with MAD security that wanted to do a mock assessment. Does, does that
That
kind of
is
make sense?
exactly right. Because if you're a VCM client of ours, we already know what your documentation is, your technical configurations. We know the people on your team. We can, if one of our VCM clients asked me and we knew what the results of their mock assessment was, I can give a very accurate answer about how long it's going to take for mediation. Versus if it's an unknown, if it's a client that doesn't have our VCM service, that's a much harder answer because again, we're not familiar. We don't know all the every company is completely different. You operate completely different. You may have common like software and things like that, but again, like Adam mentioned, the familiarity if you're a VCM client would help out tremendously.
Excellent. Yeah, I know we've had several companies coming to us here lately wanting us to do the mock assessment alone because they have been preparing for it, whether it be internally or whether it be with another third party provider, and they want to just basically double check with a different RPO or MSSP to see, am I indeed ready?
Yeah.
So that's why that thought process came up. Let's make sure if you do have any other questions, I'm going to give us about 60 more seconds here to get those submitted. If not, we will move on. We've got a couple more things to touch on before we finish up. So please feel free, go ahead and submit anything else that you may have. Give it about another 45, 50 seconds here. All right. If nothing else is coming in question-wise, we appreciate all those questions that we did have submitted. So definitely, we love it when you guys interact, ask any questions that you did have. Anything else we had here, we covered. It was basically a duplicate of what we just answered. So what I'll do is I'll continue here. Be considerate of your time. I do want to go ahead and invite you to the upcoming town halls that we have. Please mark your calendars. Our next town halls will be October the 16th, which we already have the subject up here as well. This will be posted tomorrow to go ahead and start registration. There is how MAD security services align with CMMC and why that matters. Then we'll also have another town hall in November. We are actually going to be doing a 48 CFR special here to give you some answers on what to expect once it is indeed in place and in contracts, and then followed by our town hall in December, which is December 18th. Remember, that's every third Thursday of the month. That's going to be at 2 p.m. Central Time. So that'll wrap us up for today. I would like to thank you all again so much for joining today's town hall. Remember that CMMC readiness isn't just about documentation and technical implementations. It's about the people, the preparation, and the confidence to pass the audit. Dry runs and mock assessments give you all of that confidence. And MAD Security is here to walk you through and to help you with compliance readiness all the way to your final audit. I'm just a call or an email or a booking link away if you'd like to learn more. Again, submit any questions that you do have. It'll be our pleasure to get to you if you were not able to answer it today or if you're not joining us live. So until next time, stay secure, stay prepared, and we'll see you in October. Thank you so much.